Hi everybody, I'm Heidi and I'm here with another crochet program for you. Today's project is going to be working on a cozy that you could use for a can or a bottle, a small mason jar. It's going to be to fit about a 12-ounce can, so if you're working with a can that's taller, you just have to do a few more rows than what I have written in the pattern. And I did write a pattern. The intention is that it's going to be linked in the description and available for you to download from our website as well. Which, if you're not aware, we have a download section in our collection of material that is free and available for you. It includes, books and movies and a lot of music. There are also, though, knitting and crochet patterns. For example, one of our presenters, Drew Hill, who comes to the library and often does the amigurumi programs. He has always written the pattern for the program, and he has provided the patterns for free, so that if you weren't able to go to the program or you wanted the pattern, at a later date, it's available there for you to get, and so you can make the project. And if you're wondering, what am I saying, amigurumi, that is a Japanese crochet technique of working in the round, and it's typically how you would work to create these softy toys, stuffed creatures. And it is a method of working in the round where you're not joining each round. So it creates working with a spiral. And I can show you, demonstrating on this one, you can see how the stripe doesn't meet up because it's working in a spiral. It went all the way around, and ended up here. You can see, got liquid in there, so I want to tilt it. You can see in the bottom how there is this spiral. And oops, go the other way. It's so confusing. So anyway, you can see how we start, and this is spiral. This is going to be a pretty quick increase. Many amigurumi type projects may begin with 6 crochets, and then you go to 12, and you just keep increasing, adding 6 each time. And so you have 6, 12, 18, 24. We're going to start with 10 and move to 20 and then to 30. So there's not too many rounds of increasing, and then it's just going to be working around and around until you get it to the height that you'd like. Again, optional to do the color changes. I'm also going to show you this spike stitch because I thought that's kind of a cool look. And you can even do that spike stitch anywhere, in the cozy. It wouldn't have to just be at the top. So just kind of a place there where I decided to show you, to demonstrate it for you. Okay, so I think enough talk now. One thing I should mention, though, I am working with a medium weight acrylic yarn, and I like that because it has a nice stretch to it. Cotton yarns tend to be a little stiffer, and sometimes, might not really stay with the can. It might be a little bit tight when you're first trying to squeeze it onto the can, but once you get it on there, it fits real snug, and it works out really well. As the can is sweating, it's going to absorb that moisture so your hand doesn't get wet. Great when it's cold outside. You don't want a cold hand with your cold beverage, or you don't want your warm hand making your cold beverage warm. Okay, I think now we're ready to begin. Okay, so to begin the project, you need to start with a slip stitch. We're going to chain 4 and make a slip stitch into that chain to make a chain 4 circle, just like the beginning of a granny square. There was a granny square program recently. If you've watched that, this part will be very familiar to you. I was speaking about amigurumi at the beginning, and not traditionally, but many amigurumi projects begin with what is called the magic circle. I have decided not to go into that today because it can be really confusing. Even people who have been crocheting for years, sometimes they just don't get it. They don't get the magic circle. And there's also many different ways to do it. So if you're interested in learning that, I recommend, just do a Google search for crochet magic circle and see if you can teach it to yourself that way. So for today, we're just going to begin with that slip knot, folding the tail, or bring the tail over the working yarn, folding this over. All right, so it looks like a pretzel. And my working yarn is the one that's underneath everything. So I'm going to place that on the hook. Oop. Pulling that loop up and pull tight for my slip stitch. Not too tight. And now to chain 4. and just insert, pulling up the loop, making the slip stitch to join, and we have our circle. I did a pretty loose circle, but that's alright. It's good because we're going to work 10 of the half double crochet stitch in this circle. So to do the half double crochet, quick review, beginning with a yarn over, so you already have 2 loops on your hook. Insert the hook into the center of the circle, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. And this first one's going to be a little bit kind of short and stubby because we didn't start with chain 2 to build up the row height. So we don't really need to do that. I figure as we're working it'll work itself out. And we won't be doing any of that chaining to start the height of the row because we're working in a spiral in a round. There are methods to join your rounds, and you would always start then with a chain stitch at the beginning, or a chain 2 or a chain 3 depending on what height of your stitch. But it starts to create a seam, and I don't find that to be very attractive. So I like to work this style. The only kind of misgiving is when you're working stripes. So stripes can be better if you are joining your rows, because otherwise you do end up with what I was saying earlier, how the color kind of jumps over. Alright, so continuing with the half double crochets, I need to do 9 more, and I'm going to work fairly quickly just to get around. If you need to learn these stitches, there is a basic crochet program that we have on our AADL TV that you can go back and look for and learn some of these stitches. Okay, I'm at the end, and I'm not going to join, to make just to join the row and then I have to keep working. I'm just going to work my next round just starting right in that stitch. Okay? And now here's a point where sometimes it's good to use a stitch marker to help you keep track of where the beginning of your row is. This is one example of a stitch marker. You could use a paper clip or like a lobster clasp earring. There's other stitch markers out there too that you can purchase, whatever you find works for you. It just has to be something that won't fall out but is removable, so that you can move it with each row. Alright, so we started with 10, and we want to move into a round of 20. So to do that, we have to add 10 more stitches. To do that means we're adding 2 stitches in each stitch. So that is going to be an increase stitch. So first we begin with making 1 half double crochet stitch. And now right into that same stitch, zoom in just a bit more. So zoomed in more so you can see there's 1 stitch in there. Now we're going to go right back into that same stitch. And we have 2 half double crochet in 1 stitch. Next stitch, it's the same thing. For this whole round, 2 stitches in each stitch. The next stitch I've slowed it down, so hopefully you can really clearly see the action of putting 2 half double crochets in 1 stitch to create the increase. And we have 19, 20, Okay, so maybe you can kind of see as you go around. Now there's 2 stitches in each stitch, and we're already starting to get the look of the spiral. Alright, we have 20 for the second round. Third round is 30, which means we need to add another 10. So I'm not going to increase every stitch, but every second stitch, or every other stitch. If I was increasing to 40 from 30, it would be, every third stitch, because you add one. Hopefully that'll start to make sense. So we'll begin first just 1 half double crochet in the first stitch. The next stitch we'll do the increase 2 half double crochet, 1, 2, and then this is number 3. So just kind of keep adding on as we go. This would be 4, and then 5, 6, and I tend to count as I go, and kind of count in a rhythmic way for when I'm making my increase, so that I know I'm doing it in the right place and the right number, and I know it's the correct one because it should be a multiple of 3. So it's 5, 6. Now I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm just going to keep going to the end till we get to 30 stitches. Okay, so 30 stitches, and you can see that spiral forming and definitely getting a little bit wider in our circle. Not quite wide enough though, but I don't want to go to 40 stitches because that would just be, it ends up being too wide for the can, and it's nice to kind of stabilize and solidify the circle with another round of 30, which means just doing 1 half double crochet in each stitch around, and that will get us an appropriate diameter to fit most cans, smaller mason jars, the 12-ounce bottle. So now no increasing, just the half double crochet stitch in each stitch around. And having the stitch marker in place, I mean, it's still good to count every now and then to make sure you didn't miss a stitch somewhere, but you are going to be less reliant on that. You can rely more on the stitch marker to help keep your place, to help keep where is the beginning of each round. Can be good to count though, because every now and then stitch markers sometimes fall out. But then you can also, as you learn to see your stitches, be able to figure out where the beginning of the row was, knowing that your increase was your last stitch. So you just go back and find where there's 2 stitches, in a stitch. If you're going backwards, the first one that you would come upon, and that would be the end of your last row. And so try to embrace, if there are moments where your count is off, or you feel like you skip something, or it somehow is just not correct, because those are times for learning. I've had plenty, and I still to this day I've had to tear out a few rounds because I somewhere missed one of my increases, so that's normal. Alright, so that looks pretty good. That's a nice size. We're looking at about 3.5. Yeah, so 3 1/4, 3.5, depending upon your gauge. But mine's pretty fair. It's not too tight, not too loose. And you may just have to adjust a pattern sometimes, or if it is too loose, start working with a smaller hook. If you're crocheting really tight, go up a hook size, and then you'll usually meet the gauge that's required for the project. But Can Cozy, it's pretty loose. Not loose tension, but as loose as far as forgiving. You don't have to be overly specific about this project, and so that's why it's a good practice for learning those increased stitches, learning working in the round. Now, in order to make this so it's going to stand up, you can see on this one there's this ridge, and this is actually a design element you could use throughout the entire project if you'd like. Maybe I'll demonstrate that on this one for a moment. But the important thing is, in order to get this to stand up, we have to do this where we only crochet in the back loop, and that's going to help kind of turn it to a 90 degree so we can start working up that way. So yarn over, and instead of going under both loops, I'm going to go over under what is back loop only. So this would be the front loop, and this is considered the back loop. It's the one furthest away from you. So same half double crochet stitch into back loop only. And again, a slow motion segment of working the stitch, working into back loop only. So be diligent with that you don't start to pick up, those two. You want just this one. Okay, so sometimes what happens when you're working in the round, even not just only in the back loop only kind of work, as you're starting to work in the round, it will start to curve, which is great. I mean, that's what you're going for, but make sure that you keep your outside out and your inside in. You can see the different look. I mean, if it ends up that way, it's okay. I mean, sometimes that could be a design choice, but ideally, the reason why we're doing this back loop is going to help it to build that nice nice ledge, nice edge to turn. See how that's already making it, that 90 degree sort of. And there's my stitch marker, so this will be last one for that. Okay, so we've made the turn, and now it's just going to be working round by round, 30 stitches around, and always meeting up at your stitch marker so that you'll know how many rows you've gone. You could also just be free about it and just crochet around and around and around until you get to the height you'd like, and that is perfectly fine. I'm going to start again now working under both loops. Oh, I was going to show you working in the back loop how that creates a ridge, but you can see it there. I mean, if you just kept going, I guess we can do that. So if we wanted to, we could just keep working under that back loop only. And we'll work a couple rounds and you'll see how that looks. Alright, we have arrived at about round 9 of the project, and I've been working in the back loop only, so you could see how that starts to create that nice texture as compared to this one. This one is a little, I think a little denser. It's a little bit thicker feeling with the stitch going under both loops than this one is a little, but they're both pretty good. I mean, they're both pretty stretchy, and it'll work really great for a cozy. And it's kind of an interesting design element. to keep track of your rounds, because again, we're not working in rows, we are working in the round. And so we began with, and it's kind of hard to see because it's a spiral, but we had, the 10, and then round 2 was the 20, and then the 30, and then we had round 4 was 30, and then this is the beginning of round 5, working in that back loop, and then we have 6, 7, 8, and 9. And here is where I did my color change. And I'm going to show you how I go about that. I like to work in the last stitch of the previous round so that the new round begins with the new color. So I have the stitch mostly done. Take my new color and not making a slip knot, just laying that on the hook. And pull that loop down tight, okay. And pull through all 3 loops, and now we have the new color ready to go. And we can tie them together to help secure it. Especially since this is going to be the inside of the project, you don't have to worry about seeing those knots, but they end up blending in pretty well anyway. Now I'll cut this off. You could also just keep that yarn on the ball and not cut it off. It can be a little fiddly working with it, but if you were going to do a lot of color, like every other row you're going to change color, it's a nice thing to do, just kind of carry that color along. But that's for another project. Okay, so now for the stripe, I guess I'll just keep going in those back loops. Or, no, maybe I'm going to switch to going under both loops. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. See, this was improvised right now. So we just go right back to, I'm going to actually work on, let's get those tails. I'm going to work with, I like to crochet over my tails so I don't have as much to weave in the end. Alright. So I forgot to put my stitch marker in, but we're going to know where that first stitch was. It's pretty obvious, right, with that color change. And I'll do this color for, I think it's cute, do it for a couple rows. So I'm going in that stitch and also around those tails. So they're kind of laying across on top of the stitch. And that's pretty good. That'll be secure enough. Alright, so I will meet you back here when I've completed these rounds that are number 10 and 11. Okay, so I didn't come back right away. I decided to just keep going. I also ended up working in the back loop only of that first round with the pale pink, just to help maintain that design element of the ridge. And then in the next round I worked under both loops. When I changed color, again I worked under both loops, and then moved into working under the back loop only to return to that ridge, just because I kind of liked the way just that design looked. And so this is the point where I would switch colors again, and like I did on the other one, and do that spike stitch that I was going to demonstrate for you on this. But I don't think I'm going to like the look of that with already the ridge on here, so I decided I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to do the finishing round, but I want to move on and show you that spike stitch, so I just moved back to the old cozy, or the other cozy. So I've gone back, I took out those other rows, and that's a really nice thing about crochet. It's very easy to undo your work, unlike knitting. You just tear it out and start up again. Okay, so the spike stitch it's the same stitch. It's still, we're doing half double crochet. You could do it with a single crochet. You could do it with any stitch. What makes it, what's specific about it is that instead of going underneath, both loops of the stitch in the row below, or the row you would normally be working into, you're going to go a row below. There's some that are, it's sometimes referred to, as a long spike stitch or long double crochet or something like that where you would go even farther down. You might go down 2 rows, 4 rows, it just depends. So let's just see what that looks like. Okay. I'm crocheting over my tails from the color change. So first I'm just going to start off with 2 half double crochets. We get going on my row. Okay, yarn over, and now normally we'd go into that stitch, but we're going to go into the hole that's right before. It's easy to see when working in the round, the holes stack up pretty well. If you're doing something where you're working in rows and you're turning your work, sometimes that hole will be kind of off to the side, so you start to learn how to find where you're supposed to go. For now, I'm just going to show you going in through that hole, that row below, and pulling it up, so you can see how it's longer. Yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and we have a spike stitch. And now I'm going to go, so we're going to skip that stitch that hasn't been stitched into because it's already been taken care of with the spike stitch below. So you move on to the next one. We'll do 2 just regular half double crochets and then another spike stitch. So again, I'm not going in there, I'm going in here, and I'm also skipping working in that section. Pulling up the loop, and there we have it. It's really easy since I have 30 stitches. I knew I could do that every 3rd stitch, and it would come out with a nice pattern, balanced pattern anyway, even all the way around. I'm going to move my tails out of the way, just finish these off. So as I was working on the other cozy, I was thinking to myself how I can't even follow my own pattern. And that's a good thing. I mean, I tend to improvise a lot of times or change things, and you can do that very easily with crochet. It is so sculptural. Like even this can cozy, you could choose to do single crochets. You know, once you have your base, you could choose to do single crochets. You're just going to do more rows. You could even change from single crochet to half double crochet, or you know, whatever you want to do. Add in elements like the spike stitch. It's very, very flexible. You could even do single crochet for your whole, for the base. Just might need to do an extra round. You have to just see if it's the right size, and that's going to depend too on your gauge, meaning how loose or how tightly you crochet. So you might do this in single crochet and just have to go up to one more round to 40 to get the right diameter. If you're really just beginning though, encourage you to stick with the pattern, and you know, all the other elements, all the other playful parts will fall into place eventually in the future. Okay, so I got my last stitch is a spike stitch, and I'm at the end, and I am at this point going to join this row. Take my stitch marker out, so I'm just going to place my hook under those stitches, pull up a loop, pull it through there, and that's a nice slip stitch. Chain 1, turn the work, because I like to do a round of slip stitch just to finish off my top edge. Kind of gives it a little nice stability with that. It's a counteractive to the way the other stitches are going. I don't really know how to explain it. It just gives it a nice little tension at the top. Could also do a row of single crochet there, but I'm just going to slip stitch all the way through. So that's just putting the hook through, grabbing up a loop, and doing that. So, you know, one less than a single crochet would be. So I'm not going to yarn over again. I'm just pulling up that loop and pulling it through. And we're at the end. And we can just simply work the hook through, pull up a loop, and tying it off like that. Weave that end in. There is a way to do that so it's a little bit cleaner too. I'm just going to undo this. Okay, so there's another way. It's called the invisible join. So what we're going to do is we've made the last stitch, and now we just, I've cut the yarn and I'm just pulling it all the way through the loop. You need to get a yarn needle and thread this onto the needle. And I'm going to find that stitch. And then you just go through the back loop only of the last stitch you made. Pull that down. And hopefully you can see it made a nice V just like you have, your other stitches. Pull it not too tight. And there you go. And then we just continue to weave in our ends. And that's going to be tight. Yeah, it's not pulling open. So I'm kind of weird about how I weave my ends. I'm sure I'm not doing it in a highly professional manner, but they're always secure, so if anything, I probably overdo it. Okay, so I'm just going to weave that tail through some of those layers a little bit further down. And then it's good to go back the other direction. Kind of looping it. I'm just trying to weave, within the stitches so it doesn't show up on the outside. That's pretty good. Then we cut that off, and we have the completed can cozy with a stripe and a spike stitch. Okay, so that completes our can cozy project. I hope you enjoyed watching and that you learned something. I really hope that you go and make a couple can cozies, just working with the pattern as is, and then when you're comfortable breaking off into adding different elements like changing the color, even changing up which stitch you're using, adding in maybe the spike stitch element or something like that. So I showed you quite a few things today, and you don't have to, don't mean to overwhelm, or you don't have to do them all. Just wanted to give you some options for what is a pretty simple and fun project. Just working with one color is really great practice. Working in the round, learning those increases, working with your tension, and you could add some little stitching. I just did X's. You could do something else to add somebody's initial, would be really fun, or just a way to add some more color. I was starting to crochet, actually to stitch around, but then I realized, oh yeah, that's right, it's a spiral, so the row wasn't going to meet up. But then I started to think it would have been really neat just to add that color element of maybe just having, the whole thing, stitched. Not necessarily with X's, but maybe diagonals or just something. So you just keep having a lot of ideas. It's what's great about having something that's kind of a just basic jumping off point. And you can do quite a bit with it, work a little bit taller if you need to. So I have fun, learned a few things, a couple back loop stitches and the spike stitches, and I look forward to bringing you more crochet programs. So if there's something that you're kind of wondering about or you'd like to see done, please leave a comment or send a comment to the library through the website. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to our channel, and keep watching. Have a great day.